Nani? One thing I draw all the time with my characters are their faces. Who would have thought? And it's what I enjoy the most. And so in today's episode of YouTube Art School, I'm gonna show you my simple method to draw anime faces, which has kind of become my choice of style over the years. Oh, and also how to draw them from any angles, because it wouldn't be a good method otherwise. So grab your pencil and follow along. Pretty sure you should be able to do this even if you don't have much experience, and I'm going to be covering all the steps. So like with all faces, I think it's always easier to start with the head shape and then draw on the facial features next. And all heads start with a circle. So let's draw the face from the front first so that I can show you the correct proportions, and then we'll look at different angles. And by the way, the circle can be kind of crappy. It doesn't have to be perfect. We'll erase most of it along the way anyways. So let's split that down the middle. And on the left, I'll have the male version and the female version over here. The main difference at this point will just be the shape of the jaw. For females, I personally tend to extend the jaw, but just slightly, so that the overall head shape is still very much roundish. But for males, I'll stretch down their jaws quite a bit more in comparison. We could also have stronger built female jaws and more feminine male jaws, I guess, whatever you prefer. Just make sure that both sides are symmetrical, and that's why we have that vertical line in there to help. If you're new to drawing faces, I'd practice this a lot before trying different angles. The next step will be to add the eyebrows, because that's going to help us place everything else much easier. So regardless of how you drew your jaw, the eyebrows will just go right below the center of that circle that we started with. You can pretty much ignore the entire top half. Nothing goes there except the hair. But I have a different class for that. Link in the description if you're interested. Anyways, like with everything, there are many ways to draw eyebrows. But most anime eyebrows are just two lines. So one slightly tilted this way and another tilted down instead. And the part towards the center of the face will just have more thickness to it. How much thickness? You decide. So to complete the head shape, let's add the ears just above the corner of the jawline there, with the tip of the ear just below the eyebrow level. It's kind of this rounded parallelogram shape. Now, quality anime tend to draw all the details of the ear, so let's do the same real quick. Starting with the helix, the tragus, going into the notch here, and then curving back up to the anti-helix that kind of forks in half as it slides under the helix. This looks scary at first, I get it, but honestly it's super easy to do after a couple of tries. There are very few lines to remember, and it always looks the same regardless of the character. You learn this one and you're set for life. Unlike the rest of the facial features that we're gonna do right now. The eyes are next, and the base of it will look like this. Kind of the opposite of an eyebrow. At a short line first, and then a relatively leveled curve. Then we come back with a stronger curve that just fades halfway to the corner of the eye. The height of the eye can vary a lot depending if it's a character meant to be cuter or more serious, and personally I prefer a thinner eye for males and a rounder one for females. Now next, there are many ways to draw the eyelashes again, but what I start with for females will usually look like a simple duplicate of the line that we started with for the eye. And then you can dress this up with more if you want, like adding bottom eyelashes, or maybe having that line in the corner of the eye here continue a little longer. Also for longer eyelashes, you'll just want to start from like the center of the eye and extend them past the initial shape that we drew for it. Otherwise it won't look quite right. It kind of has to radiate in all directions. So something like this. Males can of course also have thicker eyelashes, but usually, personally, I'll leave them the way they are. Anyways, moving on. Next we can add the upper eyelid fold, and that's just going to be the same line as the top half of the eye, but slightly more accentuated. You just want to make sure that it's not longer than the eye. And if you're fancy, you can make that curve down more at the end here, the same way that the eyebrow curves down. See that? It just looks more anatomically correct. Another important thing to keep in mind, and I almost forget to mention, it's always to have roughly one eye's width of space between your two eyes. If you don't have enough space, the character will look mega derpy, and if it's too much, it'll look like some alien. Yikes. So yeah, probably avoid that. And this applies even if you have huge eyes, you still want a nice width in between them. Anya as proof. Now for the iris, again, the shape will have a big impact on how we perceive the character, with bigger, more cat-like irises best for cuter characters, and smaller ones for more mature, more intimidating characters maybe. Again, I just use smaller ones for males and bigger ones for females. Easy. The pupil, if any, can also be big or small. Doesn't really matter. It's still small anyways. But sometimes you'll see the specular highlights drawn with lines to make the eye look more sparkly. I usually color my characters, so I skip that step, but you can draw a circle or two in the same spot for both eyes, and then fill the pupil and darken the top of the iris to make it pop a little bit. Something like that. That's like the anime starter pack. And now we're not missing much. So as a rough guideline, I'll place the tip of the nose right down the middle of the space that we have left between the eyes and the chin. And this is the shape that I'll always have in mind when drawing it. It's not going to stay like that. We're just using this to construct it, but this shape is perfect to draw the nose from the front, and especially from different angles, where it usually gets a lot more difficult to do it right. We'll see that in a second. For now, we'll just have this triangle thing, which is just the bottom part of that shape that we're able to see from our point of view. And then depending on the character, we could erase most of it to the point that there's really not much left. Maybe also split the shape in half and erase the rest for a simpler style, or leave more of the original shape to define the nose better. You'll see from different angles, the shape helps a lot, but it's always like the foundation of any stylized nose you draw, even the more simple ones. And with this should always be in the right spot. And then we're just left with the mouth to draw. Again, placing it right in the middle of that space that we have left. And for anime characters, it's often just going to be a simple curve like that, with a little triangle below to help like give some thickness to the lower lip. Could be just a line too, but that's it. How's yours looking so far? Now, if you're also interested to draw the body to go along with it, and if you want to learn, the skills to create awesome looking characters, learn all about anatomy, color, composition, design, how to paint digitally, and just much more, you should check out my art program that just happens to be on sale for a couple more days until the end of the month to celebrate reaching 27,000 registered students. You'll find a link to it in the video description with a ton more details if you're interested. It's the project that I'm most proud of in my life so far. A ton of work and time went into this, and by the time you complete the program, I can guarantee that you'll have all the skills to draw or paint literally anything your mind can imagine. You should check it out. All right, now let's draw the neck for our floating heads. There's a little trick where you can just imagine an invisible line continuing from the circle that we drew for the head, like that, and then make it more or less wide depending on how strong you want the character to be in. Holy crap, we're done. Kinda easy, no? If you nodded, you should be up to what comes next. Different angles. Now this is going to be a lot harder, but there are a couple of guidelines that I think will help to know. The first one is the relationship between all the facial features when the head is tilted up or down. When the head points down, the whole face will seem to drop within the head shape. And at the same time, the ears will seem to rise in comparison. And it's obviously the opposite when the face looks up. And that's probably the most important thing to keep in mind. But there's more, because the face has a curve to it, right? It's not flat. Everything will follow that curvature when the head is pointed up or down, kinda like this. It's something that we don't notice just seen from the front in a neutral position. The eyes just seem kind of straight in that position, but they curve to follow that angle of the head as it tilts. Everything else will just follow that logic. So the eyebrows will look like they're curving in the same direction, the mouth as well, and the nose shape along with it. We'll either be able to see more of the underside where the nostrils are, or more of the top of the nose depending on that angle. And then once we're happy with the angle, we can then erase the outline and we should be left with a more abstract representation of it, but still an accurate one, which often doesn't look right when you don't use this kind of guideline for it. And I think it goes without saying, but the more extreme the angle, the more pronounced this effect will be. So I'd save the more extreme angles for when you have a lot of experience, because these are pretty hard. All right, now real quick, when seen from the side, there's actually one more guideline that we should also keep in mind, and that would be the perspective of the facial features. So it's more straightforward for the head in a neutral position. Actually, it doesn't really apply. We just gotta make sure to gradually slide the features towards the direction of the head. And here it really helps at first to draw a symmetry line for the face, to have an idea of where the nose should be, to help center the mouth and make sure the eyes are where they should. As the head rotates, the nose will start to partially and then completely hide the farthest eye, and the eye that remains visible will also appear to get a little narrower with the perspective. And we can also see that ear slowly creep into the silhouette of the ear as the head rotates. Now, when the head is seen from above or below on top of that, on top of looking sideways, then we'll have to tilt everything accordingly too. Those are the hardest examples. So let's look at one here. We see less of the forehead because the head is tilted back, and we see more of the chin. All the facial features appear higher within the head shape, and they now all follow this tilt angle, all lined up the same. The opposite example would be this, where everything's shifted down instead, allowing us to see more of the forehead, more of the top of the nose, less of the chin, and an inverted tilt to all the facial features in general. Now, hopefully keeping those guidelines in mind should make it easier to troubleshoot when things don't look quite right, but don't hesitate to look at yourself in the mirror or look at a 3D model from different angles as a reference, if it helps. It should help. Now, let's give these guys some hair and slap on some colors real quick for the video thumbnail. And then for the rest, I'll just let this play. And I'll see you next week for another epic art class. Roll the music.